This is the Power Break Podcast, number 128, titled, To Blame or to Make Excuses is to be lame.
Lame-o.
Hi, I'm Bob Brubaker along with JT. We hope you'll stay tuned as we seek to give you a little power in this break to help you succeed in the race of life.
This is the Power Break Podcast with a focus on the spiritual, the mental, and the physical aspects, all to help you succeed in the race of life. For show notes from today's podcast, go to bobbrubaker.com and follow the link for the Power Break Podcast. How are you, man?
Well, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks since I saw your smiling face.
We missed putting together the podcast, but we both of us had a little time with family.
Yeah,
and
it was really good.
How was your trip? You took a trip?
We did. Family? Yeah, we went up to Maggie Valley, North Carolina area and stayed in a cabin. You know, basically, we just kind of did our own thing because, you know, they take COVID very seriously, as they should up there. So, you know, we respected that and just kind of kept to ourselves. You know, we only went out to eat once. And but, man, it was so good. You know, we went tubing and there was snow on Christmas Eve. And, you know, the kids, because they're from Florida, forgot to put their shoes on when they saw the snow, and they went out, and I'm like, as soon as those nerves start to feel that cold, they're going to be in. And sure enough, they came in, my feet hurt. I'm like, yeah, boy. I bet they do. But it was really good. It was really an excellent Christmas. How about you, buddy?
Well, Jan and I took a time, a little getaway, and we decided it was a time to just be scheduled lazy. How's that?
It's awesome, man. And you need it. Yeah, you need it.
It was a time of rest.
Did it turn out to be a time of rest, though?
It was, and of course I blew it on Saturday because I rode 100 miles with a bunch of guys that really pushed the pace. So.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah.
We're going to talk about this, about resolutions or whatever, and I kind of made a resolution to myself that I would actually listen to my Whoop this year. Okay,
and very smart.
And my Whoop said when I got up on Saturday morning, my recovery was in the red, which says you shouldn't work out. And so you went I blew it already.
So you went 100 miles right after that. You're so funny.
What an idiot, right?
You know something? We got to attach a voice to it. Your Whoop. It's got to be able to talk to you like an Alexa or
Don't
something.
do it, Bob. Well, that's what looking at the score every day that they give you on your recovery, that, you know, how you recover through the night, that's based on your heart rate variability. And for some reason, ever since then, my heart rate variability has been off. So I think maybe
You should build in something to where it shocks you if you're going against its advice. That would make me laugh. Where's Bob? He's getting shocked back there because he's not supposed to be here.
Well, speaking of saying something, let's say something to our listeners about how much we appreciate their listening to the Power Break Podcast, for telling others, and for giving us ratings and reviews at wherever you download the podcast.
Yeah, it's every single time I look, the numbers are always up. It's always just it's a really humbling thing for me to think that people really just want to listen to us. So every time I look at it, I'm like, wow, man, what a blessing. Yeah.
Here we are, two guys just doing a podcast. Well, let's begin with a number one question for you, okay? What's your number one excuse that you've made over this past year? Or let's turn it again. Maybe you did the blame game, or who did you blame the most for a fault in your life? Like Amy?
No, I don't blame Amy. You know, I'm very blessed in that our marriage is a very healthy one, so we don't blame each other. But you know, where I used to work was very unhealthy, so there was a lot of blame going on there. Yeah. But I don't work there anymore, so
you're retired.
There you have it. Yeah, yeah. It's you know, the number one excuse I think is always about time, right?
Yeah.
It's always about you know, I'll get to it, but I don't have the time. And, you know, now that I'm retired and, you know, I know I'm going to end up doing something else. You know, I already have people asking me if they want to do things with them, you know, on the side or as a consultant or whatever. And the simple truth is, you know, I'm going to take this time to do the things that I said I didn't have time for, like spend a little more time with my kids, do some of the projects around the house. I'm going to knock all that stuff out. And then once all that stuff is done, man, I'll figure out what I'm doing. But my number one excuse is always I don't have time. And I think because we keep ourselves so busy with work and church and then all the extra stuff that we have to do with our kids, you know, and then a lot of the stuff with kids now isn't easy. It used to be when I was a kid, Little League was you rode your bike up to your baseball practice and then you rode back. Now your parent has to drive you because it's in another town, or it's it's a totally different game. And a lot of these teams are travel teams, or if you play hockey, it's a travel team. And man, it's just something, it's always, it's more busy. So time has definitely been my big excuse. And I've been able to get back to more devotional time. I've been able to get back to more exercise time. So yeah, how about you, man? What's been your big excuse?
Well, I think the excuse, I just don't have time for it. It's interesting how I put things, following time management practices, put things on a to-do list. And it's interesting, I've actually started 3 books over the past years, started to write, and then I look at it in the afternoon and I'm just exhausted, and I say, well, I just don't have time right now.
And there you go.
So it's an excuse. Sometimes and what it means, if you don't have time, then you have to find a way to make the time, right?
That's right.
And then that's actually taking the 24 hours and splitting it up and finding ways to adjust things to make things happen. Well, the point is, we all make excuses or we blame someone for what has gone wrong, but the right thing to do is to make a conscientious effort in the coming years to take responsibility, which is another way of saying have integrity. Proverbs 20 and verse 7 says, the righteous walks in his integrity, and blessed are his children after them.
Man, I love how you brought integrity right into it, because I think that's really a crucial part of it. Let's continue to talk more about that as we turn to your blog. Folks, if you haven't been to Rob Brubaker.
There you go.
Rob
It's
Brubaker.
Been a couple of weeks since you've
that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just got the most flowing name. If you haven't been to BobBrubaker.com, folks, there's a ton of resources there. Sign up for free to get the blog. It'll show up every Monday. It will be awesome. I promise you, it's a blessing. But you actually told me something about time management that really changed the way I looked at my life, and it was basically you only make time for the things that you truly care about.
Oh yeah.
So if you want to know what you really care about, look at where you're putting your most time.
Yeah.
It's sobering, because you're like, ooh, man, I was like, man, I'm not putting enough into my marriage. I'm not putting enough, my kids, I'll put more into my kids than Amy and I's relationship. That's something that has always been something I have to keep an eye on. And really, when you said that to me, that changed everything. It was like, oh man, we really need to focus. I need to focus more on how I'm spending my time, because it's a direct reflection.
And just like if you want to lose weight, you take a big assessment of kind of a journal or a log of what you actually are eating.
Yeah, right.
And when you're eating, and then and the same thing with you want to get a better handle on time management, you actually take a look at scheduling things and where you've put things. Anyway, the article is titled "To Blame or to Make Excuses is to Be Lame." It's found at BobBrubaker.com, and I wrote these words. That the title is just an adjusted of an old proverb, but it is true today as it ever has been, that so much is appropriate to begin the year with a quip to encourage you not to play the blame or excuse game. Because have you ever noticed how everyone is quick to blame or to make excuses? Politicians blame the other party, batters strike out, blame the umpire, kickers miss a field goal, blame the holder, children come home with poor grades and blame the teacher, grown-ups have a bad day at work and blame the supervisor, or worse, come up with 1,000 excuses.
And one thing that I've noticed about our psychology that honestly scares me a little bit is we have become so accustomed to not taking the blame for things that now if you take the blame instead of being a man of integrity, you're kind of the idiot.
Hey, what's wrong with you?
Well, he took the blame. Now because when I was sitting there and, I'm just kind of analyzing a lot of my relationships in the past at work and why things worked at work and why things didn't when it came to the politics. And I was reminded of Survivor Island. Have you ever watched that movie? It's a TV show, Survivor.
No.
It's one of the biggest demonstrations of how awful human beings can be to each other, I think.
Really?
Yeah, because basically the whole goal is to be the last one standing. So you're there's competitions, but there's also like a psychological game that you have to play with other people, and you can't really tell them the truth about things because those people don't get very far. Like the people who are honest and have integrity, they're like voted off almost immediately. And I think our psychology as a culture has turned into that.
Wow.
And that scares me to death, because you're not weak if you take blame for something and you have integrity. You're actually the strongest one in the room. Mm-hmm. But that's not what we do. When you look at every single article on Apple News, it's the Democrats' fault. It's the Republicans' fault. It's Fauci's fault. No, it's Birx's fault. Or no, Trump. Yeah.
And it's interesting, as I look back, we can chase this rabbit a little bit, look back that you were having a case as a supervisor in the force where the man didn't have integrity, and you were fighting for integrity, and you had trouble finding backup.
Yeah, I mean, people are like, something, it's really not that big of a deal. I'm like, yeah, it is. He technically committed a crime. Yeah. As a police officer, that can't be acceptable. Oh, well, he made mistakes. It's like, what? Then I was the bad guy for having integrity. It was crazy.
Well, let's talk about that blame game or excuse game that we first admit it comes natural. After all, our first parents came up with an excuse and blamed instead of taking responsibility. Notice what happened in the Garden of Eden after Adam and Eve had eaten of the forbidden fruit. They heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord among the trees in the garden. But the Lord, God, called to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "Well, I heard the sound of you in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself." As God said, "Who told you that you were naked?"
Who told you were naked? I love that.
Have you eaten of the tree of the which I commanded you not to eat? And the man said, "Well, it's that woman that you gave to me. She gave me the fruit of the tree, and I ate." And the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" And the woman said, "It's that serpent."
It was the serpent. Yeah.
And then the old story is, the serpent didn't have a leg to stand on.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it. But it's accurate.
Well, it is easy for us to lay the blame on someone else. It's that woman you gave me, or the serpent that deceived me. But who have you blamed recently over the past year, or something that has messed up in your lives sometime? There is a resounding resolution that is needed by all of us in the coming year to resolve to take responsibility for our actions and outcomes of our negligence, procrastination, and failures, and try not to blame on someone else. That's called integrity, and we mentioned Proverbs 20 verse 7 says, "The righteous who walks in integrity, his children are blessed after him."
Yep.
So, as the negative action of blaming is passed along to the next generation, so a man who takes responsibility, even admits his errors, thereby blesses his children and those around him by teaching them to take responsibility.
Yeah, one of the things that I've always been struck by as a law enforcement officer is how the sins of the father affect the kids.
Oh, yeah.
And the sins of the parents, period, affect the kids. So that's really important, too. So almost everything that you do is going to be reflected on your kids' lives. Mm-hmm. So if you're a person of integrity, they will be way more likely to be a person of integrity. Yeah. And if you're not, then guess what? All you're doing is teaching them to be part of the world that I don't think most of us agree with, the way that we treat each other. So,
one of the points I made in the article that as Adam became lame in his laying blame to his wife, so the attitude of blaming was passed along to his children, as we see in the life of his son Cain.
Yep.
When he did not get respect, when God did not give him respect to Cain or his offering, he eventually blamed his brother Abel and killed him.
Yep.
So we go back to the original blame. God confronted Adam. Not only did he blame Eve, but he also made an excuse by really blaming God when he implied by excuse that everything would have been fine had God not given him that woman.
That woman.
Yeah. So the point is this. When we make excuses even, we're pointing to the things that are happening outside of our control, which means we're pointing the finger at God's providence. So any excuse is really pointing the finger at God and blaming him.
That's a sobering fact. I mean, really, because that's exactly what you're doing. Yeah. When if he works all things together for our good and we're blaming others, so we're really blaming him.
Right.
He's
or blaming our circumstances. I'd have been here, but the traffic was too bad.
That's right. That's right.
So anyway, and we talked about this blaming and making excuse. It's a lame thing to do. And if you're looking for something to work on in the coming year, step up and take responsibility, admit your faults, errors, and work on changing, or just put up with being lame.
Yeah, exactly.
Check out the article. It's called To Blame or to Make Excuses is to Be Lame, and it's found at bobbrubaker.com.
So what else is happening, Bob? Any news we need to know about this week?
Well, I thought it'd be a good opportunity on the first of the year to talk about the power of gratitude. Gratitude is something we all need. And I hear more and more people talking about this, how it can help you physically, mentally, emotionally, and of course spiritually. It's even given a command to do that. And I wrote a little book on it called The Power of Gratitude, and giving you some things to be grateful about, which to be grateful. And so you'll find the book at bobbrubaker.com. Scroll through the resources, you come down to the books, and then scroll through the books. You'll find The Power of Gratitude. Check it out today. And while you're at bobbrubaker.com, check out the sermon links of the sermons I preach here at Christ Community Presbyterian Church in Clearwater. And I've been taking back now, since the first of the year has happened, we're taking back, going through the book of Acts. We're on Acts chapter 6 the next time I preach. And Acts chapter 6 is a story of some discontented people bemoaning some facts and actually grumbling and murmuring.
We are bemoaners, aren't
And
we?
so it's interesting how there was kind of some, all through the book of Acts, you see God doing a marvelous thing in building up the church, because he's going to soon scatter the church throughout all of the area, even to the ends of the earth. And so as he's building this up, there's all these problems that happen, persecution, there's sin in the camp, and here's another sin of murmuring, and we see how God moves the apostles to deal with it. And it's very appropriate.
It's truly amazing to me. I always think about the story when John is in prison, John the Baptist, and he sends his people to ask Jesus, are you the Messiah, or should we expect another one?
Yeah.
And he says, go back and tell John what you see here.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, come on, man, open your eyes. But we're so focused on our own doubt that we don't open our eyes. I think that's the big point. You got to open your eyes to what's going on around you, and you're like, oh, all right, yeah.
And one of the things I get out of the book of Acts is that, sometimes we get discouraged. Even as a Christian, you feel like you're the only one, because there's so much resistance today, and sometimes we feel like we're such on the minority here, and we feel like what is God doing, and so it's a reminder that when you're on the side of the Lord, you're in the majority.
Yeah,
remember the servant of Elisha. Went out, as one preacher said, he went out and picked up the paper one morning, and he looked around, and they were surrounded by the army of the Assyrians.
That's right.
And he came in and told Elisha, he said, "Look, Elisha, we were surrounded," and Elisha didn't even kind of just kind of nodded his head. There's more with us than there are with him. I'm sure he did kind of a count. Let's see, 1, 2, and then they're surrounded.
And what?
And then so the Lord prayed that his eyes would be open, and he looked out and saw that they were surrounded by a company of angels and chariots of fire. And so, we have to keep that in mind as we read the book of Acts, is to remind us that we may feel like we're just a insignificant minority and the world is dominating over us. Yeah. But we're on the Lord's side. Yeah. Then there's a little text of scripture in the book of Isaiah chapter 59 when it says, when the enemy will come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. And that's what you find
that's awesome.
Time and again in the book of Acts. Anyway, I've been really enjoying that, and so check out the sermons at the sermon links that are on my website, bobbrubaker.com.
Or you can go to Sermon Audio, and you can find Bob there, too. That's what I do sometimes as well.
That's the link of the website will take you to.
Oh, it sends you to. Oh, look at that. You're tricky, buddy. You get your links going in every direction.
Well, I just happen to have a good webmaster that just...
Oh, you're just trying to cover up your true location. That's what you're doing. It's like a scramble, like we're trying to trace your phone or something. All right, so... Here we go. It is time for What About This? That's time for questions and answers on the podcast. If you have a question for me or Bob, email me at jt@bobbrubaker.com, and we'll get to answering it on an upcoming Power Break podcast. And I love getting those emails. So honestly, if you got a couple of minutes, shoot me something, even if it's, hey, man, I don't like the goatee. Oh yeah, we haven't gone video yet, so
I
nobody
forgot to
knows.
start the camera
I've
today,
got this.
too.
You know, it was really funny this morning. So I was walking my kids to school, and all of a sudden I turn to my right because I like feel somebody staring at me, and it's one of the guys that used to work for me, and you know he hadn't seen me with the goatee. And he said, "Oh, isn't that cute that your kids get to get walked to school by their grandfather every morning now?" And I'm like, "Oh, man." It was actually super funny.
Listen, he may be retired, folks, but he's not even 50.
No, and well, I am 50. Exactly.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I just turned. Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway. All right, question number one.
Do you know that Howard turns 50 this year?
He does? He looks younger.
doctor.
He looks a lot younger than me, man. I don't know what he's done.
Of course, every time we ride, I get every opportunity I take, I have people sing happy birthday to him.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he really loves that. Yeah. Yeah, this is a guy who's totally to himself, doesn't want any attention drawn to him. That's perfect. Good job, buddy. All right. Question number one is from a spiritual side of life. So let's go back to uncovering the basis of excuses and excuse making and blaming others for our faults and failures. What's the basis of that? I think we're going to go back to sin,
word,
right?
Three-letter word. It's called S-I-N, right?
Yeah.
Because all excuses and blaming are sinful actions caused by the fact that we have inherited a desire to sin from Adam as we follow through in carrying it out daily. In Romans chapter 5, verse 12 says that just as sin came into the world through one man and death through sin, so death spread upon all men because all have sinned. So we look at Adam's sin in the garden. He rebelled against God by eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Then he blamed God as he made excuses for doing so because he also blamed his wife.
Yeah, there you go.
So that was what took place. So stop and think about it, how quickly we are to make excuses or blame. How many times people have been late to a meeting,
Yep.
and, well, the traffic was bad. The truth of the matter is they didn't leave early enough. Right?
Yeah, usually. Yeah. Every once in a great while, I give people you didn't know that the car in front of you was going to smash into a pole and get
Right.
stuck.
Now, that might
Every
be-
once in a while, I'll give that to people.
Yeah.
But, I used to laugh because this one professor said, man, I was totally unaware how many people in that one guy's family was going to die in one semester. And I think the grandmother died twice, which has got to be awful. But, his point was, yeah, I know where.
We make
I know
lousy
I
excuses.
know what's really going on.
Yeah. And it's interesting. There are some people in life you talk to, they seem to generate excuses so well that they have an excuse on the tip of their tongue all the time.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And, and they're just lying through their teeth. And so the point is, every time we make an excuse or blame, we're blaming God or we're blaming him, by his providence and the fact that we're making excuses. And so the point is, it's lying.
Yeah, it is.
And we're following through on that because we have this tendency to lie, to cheat, to do things wrong because we've inherited sin. And so it needs to be conquered. And the only way to do that is through the power of the Holy Spirit that is given to us as we have faith in the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I always look at what I know to be the easy way or the hard way. Mm-hmm. And very rarely is the easy way the right way. So if you...
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, very rarely. So if it's too easy, it's like, this might not be what I'm supposed to be doing. Because we talk about the narrow walk all the time, right? Narrow is the gate.
Narrow is the way.
Is the way, yeah.
Straight is the gate, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, that's something that you can use as your own kind of guide, as your own way of judging it is, man, is this going a little too simple? Maybe I'm not.
Yeah, I guess looking back this morning, I was listening to my Whoop, but also I was, today was the day to swim, and then, I didn't know if it was going to be warm enough and all that. So it was easy way out was to say, I'll listen to my Whoop.
Oh, so you didn't swim. I was going to ask you whether you did or not. You would have if I showed up with my crooked pinky.
I would have probably been swimming.
Sorry.
That's all right because, according to my Whoop, even though I was
did the right
yellow, I did the right thing because I was in a low yellow, almost in the red.
All right. You let me know when you're recovered. Or should I just call your Whoop directly? Is Bob available? All right, question number 2.
This part of the podcast brought to you by Whoop.
Whoop. From the mental aspect, how can we overcome the tendency to make excuses or blame?
first of all, it's a spiritual action. And then, of course, we rely upon the Spirit of God to overcome any and all sin. And that means we have to feed on the Word and spend time with God in prayer. And we need that help.
I knew you were going to talk about that.
That is the first and foremost. Secondly, mentally, think about the word responsibility and take responsibility. Instead of trying to portray a life of perfection, which, by the way, will never be achieved, on that note, there are little precautions you have to take to make sure that you don't have to make excuses. Like this: if you are always late and come up with excuses, train yourself to leave early enough to cover the unforeseen things that you might be late.
Yeah.
That means that I don't know how you were trained, but I was trained by my father. If you're on time, you're late.
Yep.
If you're not early, you're late.
Yep.
And on everything. Men who spend a lot of time at places early, waiting for people to get there.
Yeah.
It's interesting. He was the Sunday school superintendent at the church where I grew up, and my father always had to be the first one there. And sometimes we were there so early that, it was like, always wondered, when were the people getting here? I mean, sometimes we were there an hour early, but nevertheless, that was good training because,
yeah,
nothing wrong with that. So if you're always forgetting things, start making lists.
There you go.
And keep the list with you.
Yep.
It's all part of the discipline of taking responsibility, as we say later on, of course, as we close out the program. The discipline makes the difference in all aspects of life. And comes down to that. Mentally, we take responsibility, and that takes discipline.
Yeah, it really does. And if you're a parent, one of the things that has always been obvious to me is Amy and I are very disciplined when it comes to physical conditioning.
Mm-hmm. Howdy.
Yeah. I mean, we do something every single day. Mm-hmm. Both of us do. So guess what? My boys make a priority every single day is going outside and whenever they say, well, I just want to just like, you need to go outside. You need to do some physical stuff. And they always all of a sudden realize, oh, like he did earlier, he ran 4 miles. I should go out and do whatever, So there's it's just something that becomes a part of their life simply because of that. So if you are working on your own, excuses or tendency to be late or tendency to put things off or bad time management, if you show that to them, man, it's going to be something that they're going to be able to fix in their generation growing up, which is pretty awesome, right? So, all right, let's turn to question number 3, which obviously we're going to turn to the physical aspect. And now is the time of year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Resolutions or goals? Which is better? And when it comes to changing the physical in the coming year, which one is going to be the better way to look at it?
Well, actually, goals are, of course, because there's a lot of resolutions that are made at this time of year about physical needs. Here's what that equals. Parking problems at health clubs. But it's only lasts for the month of January.
Yes, and those of us who go to the health clubs are like, well, I used to. I don't anymore. But I don't think many people do anymore now.
Well, I know that's kind of a bad excuse because during the COVID, people have... But anyway, they always said that. If you have problems finding a parking space now, just wait 30 days or at most 60 days. They'll have plenty of parking spaces here.
And honestly, when COVID hit, all of a sudden everybody bought bikes and which has really been irritating for the people who own bikes that can't find parts now because everybody bought stuff and it's just sitting in their garage. They're not using it anymore. But
well, anyway, resolutions are, people make them and they break them. They just kind of give up on them. But goals, on the other hand, broken down into steps of achievable steps at that, will give you a person this thing called momentum, which gives them the way to achieving the goal.
That's right.
So 2 aspects that really help are based on accountability. And of course, once you make a goal and break it down into achievable goals and start the momentum, also will help you to have a friend join you in that.
That is true.
And hold you accountable, or a coach. And of course, the achievability of the goals is very important because sometimes we make lofty goals and we don't break them down into achievable parts. And so it just kind of becomes a resolution because it's just, I'd like to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think it's kind of important when you're picking the friend, or if you hire a coach, The coach is there because the coach will realize when you say, you know, I want to do this and this is how I'm going to get there. And I think you're starting a little fast, or I think we need to break this down into smaller steps. Coaches are very good at that because they understand, you know, the process that your body goes through to actually get to a plateau. Right? Yeah. Like, so if your race is 5 months from now, they're going to know how to make sure your body's ready for that. But a friend, find one that's more experienced.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, for me, you know, you were that guy when I first started riding. You had been riding your entire life. You had done all the Ironmans and stuff. So for me, it was a very obvious choice to ride with you and listen to what you said. So I didn't, you know, do stupid stuff. Plus, even though I still managed.
Much older than you. So.
And wiser. And more handsome.
It's very interesting when people find out I've done 19 Ironman triathlons. They'll first start saying, well, I think I could do that. And then, you know, and then they'll ask me questions about it. Do you understand it's 140.6 miles?
Yeah, that's a lot of time. Yeah. All alone with your thoughts.
Yeah,
and hopefully enough sugar, or you're going to bonk like it's your job.
So how about you? Any thoughts on goals and resolutions? Or?
No, really the biggest thing you hit on was keep them realistic. Mm-hmm. You know, all of us want to be, you know, a beast physically, right? All of us want to be that person, you know. But the simple truth is we can all get there. Many of us don't get there because we make the big mistake of not breaking it down into realistic goals. So either one of two things happen. We get frustrated, we get so sore we can't continue, or we hurt ourselves.
Yeah, and that's usually where
those things
people who do that, they just overtrain.
Yep.
Because you know, feel like I can train more, I'll get more success.
Yep.
Well, the bottom line, it takes discipline. And as we say, discipline makes the difference in all aspects of life. Check out today's show notes at BobBrubaker.com. Click on the Power Break podcast. Today is show number 128.
And submit your questions by email to jt@bobbrubaker.com and listen for Bob's answer on an upcoming Power Break podcast.
Real quick, a word about the Power of Gratitude, the book that we're mentioning this week on the Power Break podcast. The Power Break podcast is all about teaching you to find the power of God in your life on a daily basis to find success in the race of life. And the Power of Gratitude is something that I wrote that will really help get you going on a daily basis. It's called The Power of Gratitude. You'll find the books at BobBrubaker.com. Scroll through the resources to the books and scroll through the books to the red book called The Power of Gratitude.
Well, thank you for joining us for the Power Break podcast. Please subscribe and leave a review wherever you've downloaded the podcast, and check out show notes, news, Bob's weekly blog, and other cool things at BobBrubaker.com. And listen next time for the Power Break podcast.